And welcome back as we get ready to do some programming examples here with the scanner class. We have seen, of course, some of these scanner methods be used, but let's go ahead and use them in a greater context. For example, using them to get user input to maybe calculate something. So let's get started here with our scanner class. I've already imported it and created my object for it. So first thing I'm just going to go ahead and create a quick set a variable. So I'm going to call this input num1, and let's just go ahead and do input num2. And then let's do some strings here. So string input str1 and input str2. All right, so now we of course have some nice variables here for us to work with. So what do we want to actually do with this program? So let's just say we want to, for example, calculate the area, or we want to get a name. Very easy for us to do that. So I'm just going to create a prompt here for the user. Remember, it's always good to prompt first, because otherwise if we run our program, the program will be sitting here in the console and we'll be like just a blank line looking at us. We're not going to know what to do. So we're going to put a prompt here. Let's just start off by please enter your name. And all I'm going to do is then with this, I'm going to get that from the user as an input. So we have our first string here. So input str1. And of course, I could change this to name if I want, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave this as for now. And I'm going to just do keyboard.next line. Again, I could use keyboard.next here. It would be perfectly fine. But I'm going to use next line because at least then I'll know that my input will be on the next line, which is going to be very important for what we're going to do coming up. Now, let's go ahead and say we want to find an average. And let's just say we're going to take an average of 3 test scores. So system.out.println. And please enter your 3 test scores to find the average. All right, now that that's done, I know here since I'm doing 3, I actually probably going to need to put one more number here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in here as input num3. And I'm probably going to do one more because I'm going to need to have a average. Now, average, of course, is probably going to be a decimal value here. So I'm going to create a double and call this average. And that's the nice thing about doing this as we start designing our programs. We might recognize we need different things. And if you notice, I didn't add double average down here. I kept it up here at the top of my program simply because it's a good place for us to keep all our variables and kind of objects up here unless we need them someplace else. And we'll talk about that more as we get deeper into programming. But for now, I'm going to try to keep as many of my variables and stuff up here at the top of the program because then it's going to let my code down here be a little bit cleaner. So let's go ahead and just use input num1 equal to kb.nextInt. And then I'm going to repeat that, obviously, for the other numbers. So I'm just going to go ahead and do input num2 is equal to kb.nextInt. And input num3 is also equal to kb.nextInt. Now that these are all set, what do I want to do with it? Well, now I need to do some math, right? So I'm going to go ahead and take these here. And let's just say we want to do system.out.println. And we're just going to say the average of your test scores is, and let's go ahead and concatenate this with a little bit of math. Now, the way we can do this is we can go ahead and calculate this right in here, or I could do it before here, which is actually going to be very handy because I did an average up here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say average is equal to input num1 plus input num2 plus input num3. And then I'm going to put all that in parentheses here because I want to take the sum of this and divide that out by 3. All right, since we know we have 3 numbers, and then I can just concatenate an average right here. And that looks pretty good. So if I run this program right now, say please enter your name, then I can enter 3 test scores. So let's do a 74, let's do a 92, and let's do 85. Then we get the average of your test scores is 83.0. Awesome, that looks great. Now, I do of course have an extra input string here. Now, what if I wanted to have this be something else? What if I wanted to change a value of something? So I want to show you something right here. So I'm actually going to remove input string str2 here for a second. And let's go right down here to our code and let's just do something new here. So system.out.println, please re-enter your name. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to overwrite that previous value. And what this is going to do is it's going to update this value. Just like what we've seen with variables, how we can overwrite them. We can overwrite values of strings and numbers simply by getting a input again from the user and storing it back into the input. And let's just say if we want to do, let's say system.out.println, we'll do the same thing with one of our variables. Please re-enter your test scores, but with the new value of your retake on test number 3 of 100%. So then what we can do is we can get these input values again. And we're going to make sure we re-enter this now. So we'll do the same thing we did before. We enter our name. We enter our 3 test scores. So we did, I think it was like 74, 92, and 85. And then it says, please re-enter your name. Please re-enter your test scores. So let's go ahead and put my name in. And oh, we got an error here. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this is because, remember, when we do keyboard.nextInt, remember that cursor is technically still here. All right, it never actually moved down. All right, and so that's something you got to be careful of when we start working with this here. All right, so even though I went to enter my name, notice it jumped right to please enter your test scores. All right, so again, something I want to make sure we point out here. So if I were to take this line out of here just real quick and rerun this program and do those same test scores, 74, 92, 85, all right, we should now be able to re-enter those test scores, 74, 92, and we're going to do 100. All right, now notice the program stopped because I didn't actually output the average here. I didn't recalculate that, so I would have to, of course, put this whole other chunk of code in here as well because I want to recalculate that average. Because if I use the old definition of average, so I'm just going to comment this out just for a second here. If I leave this as is, and I put those values in again, you'll notice we still get 83 because we didn't recalculate average here. So even though we have updated this values here with a new input, we of course no longer have that. Now here's the thing, I don't have to necessarily get all of these here. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and take this off here because we know that this needs to be updated. But I actually don't need to get all of these inputs again. In fact, I only need to re-enter test score number 3. So please enter, let's just say test score number 3. And then all we need to do when we rerun this, so 74, let's do 92 and 85. And then if we enter now 100, you'll see that it has been recalculated and it only had to enter that one. So this is another thing to point out, is just making our code just a little bit more efficient. But again, this gives us some great examples of how to use different things like next line, next int, and of course we saw some fallacy in here with dealing with when we have to go with next int and trying to read more things in because of how that return statement might be.